Incoming transmission.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to day 2 here of the round of 8 in the GSL, the second to last day of our show for this season. It's been an amazing season so far. We've had some great games from the very start. We had a patch mid-season, which made some dramatic changes. We've been unpacking these games kind of as we go, seeing the meta shift in real time. And I think today should be a lot of fun with the players we've got lined up for us.
Yeah, it's been tumultuous and dynamic. I mean, Stats is coming back, giving his first really good showing since military service, and it doesn't even seem to be a fluke. He's doing well in online tournaments as well. He just qualified for Star Wars, an online tournament that's going to be happening, and a lot of players are stepping it up, man. It has been an exciting road here to the round of 8.
I'm especially interested in how Stats is going to perform here.
Yeah.
Stats, a long time ago, I would say maybe 5 or 6 years ago, was like a god tier world-class Protoss. He was one of the Protosses that was able to be, if you were to put play style on a pendulum, you'd have like SOS and partying all the way over here. You'd have Stats all the way on the other side, or Rain maybe as well. Conservative, drawn out, macro, reactive Protoss play. Hasn't had as much of a place in StarCraft 2. I'm not saying that he has to play exactly like that now, but I think we're going to see a lot of ideas like that here. And so when I watch today's group pan out, I want to see how does this style play out, especially with the new patch here.
Played really well for him in the round of 16. He actually emerged first out of his group, which is, I mean, really surprising for Stats of all people to advance out of Group B in such a fashion, beat Classic in pretty convincing way as well. I mean, heading into the round of 4. But coming into Group B, this is going to be a bit of a scary one for him. He's up against one of the best TVP players in the world in Cure. Should that go to the final match or the elimination match? He's got Shin, one of the best Zergs to play the game right now. Actually, the only Zerg in the round of 8, which is
that weird, man?
Pretty surprising.
It's crazy to say that. Obviously, GSL has been very Zerg and Terran dominant over the entirety of its history. That doesn't mean we haven't had Protosses win, but when we do have them win, it's a pretty big deal. And yeah, Shin, who's formerly known as Ragnarok, is the only Zerg that we've got right now.
Yeah, so he has to get through Shin, has to get through Cure, has to get through GuMiho. It's a pretty hectic pool of players. And guys, you just missed it on the bottom of the screen. We have the tickets going live tomorrow.
Okay, this is really important.
That was on me. I started this whole spiel about the group.
I actually didn't even notice it. But guys, tickets go on sale tomorrow, 5 p.m. Okay, I'm going to say this probably during at least 2 of the games that we're casting here live.
5:30.
5:30, thank you. Tickets go on sale at 5:30, so if you want to come down to our finals, you want to try to snipe that.
Yeah, the finals will sell out.
An average day at the studio is pretty tame. You can usually show up and get in, but when it comes to coming to an actual finals, you want to try to snipe that. So do that. I know we have people that book tickets to come out here, and then they end up missing the finals. And they're stuck outside the studio. Yeah, so also, we are reliant on viewer support. So whether it's on the Patreon or through Star Balloons, we appreciate it. This is how GSL continues to function and continue on into the future here.
Yeah, and 100% of that goes into the prize pool. Already $58,000, almost $59,000 since, I believe, the end of the previous season of GSL has been accumulated, which will be dispersed through GSL Season 1 and Season 2 this year. And in addition to supporting your favorite esports, supporting your favorite players, you also get access to a lot of cool behind-the-scene interviews. I know that the GSL staff interviewed Hero after he advanced from his group previously, and they were asking him how he feels about the patch because I believe that was the first group that played after we had, the change in patch, the change in maps here in the GSL. And he said he felt like the patch did 99% of the work, but he fought really hard for that last 1%.
So funny.
So if you want some cool things like that, support the players. I think it's like $5 or $10 on Patreon gets you that.
So here is our semifinals. We've got it half made up. We know that Hero and Maro are going to be battling it out for versus whoever gets second place in Group B and first in Group B. So, possible to have a PVT finals. I do want to point out if Shin is eliminated here, it completely changes the whole identity of the tournament because, for the season of the tournament, I should say, because there's no more Zergs, which means you have a whole matchup you don't have to practice, you don't have to try to understand or deal with, and that's pretty significant when we are post-patch, right into this. There's usually a lot of labbing that is going on in between every day of a GSL broadcast, but let's say that Shin falls here, it makes things really come down to your mirror matchup and then the matchup versus the other race.
Yeah, especially in this current GSL format where on finals day we do the semifinals and the finals. I mean, imagine having to prepare for all 3 matchups in case you play Shin in the finals or in case you play a PvP or a PvT in the finals. So we'll have to keep our eye on Shin. Of course, the last Zerg that was the only Zerg to make the round of 8, I believe, was Rogue many seasons ago. And he actually won that season, despite being the only Zerg player in the top 8. So we'll see if Shin can repeat that magic. But before we get to Shin's match, this guy right here trying to prove that the round of 16 was not a fluke. Beating Dark, beating Classic to advance in first place. He's going to go up against formerly known as Ragnarok, Shin Bohm, and this guy, only guy in the group that actually doesn't have the GSL trophy. He got second place tomorrow. I believe that was, God, the years are blending together now. I think it was 2022, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it might have been a little bit later. I mean, closer to now, I think. I'm actually, now you're throwing me up. I'm not totally sure. I kind of put him in the same category as Creator. I think Creator's journeys have always been a little bit more emotional, but we have a couple of these players who have consistently looked viable to take it and have been in the GSL pretty much the whole time. I mean, this is nearly a 13-year-old tournament. That's this show's legacy. But has not managed to go up there and raise the trophy.
See if he's going to be able to do it now. Oh, we're getting to see one of the new maps, too. Amphion going to be set number 1. We actually haven't gotten a look at this so far here at the GSL, so excited to see how this one plays out. Of course, if you missed the previous round of 8, we're here on the live new patch. New updates. If you don't know the patch, go check it out online. A lot of cool updates and a new map pool as well. This tournament's really shaken up. Let's get ready to go into Stats versus Shin here on the new set Amphion, round of 8, Group B, Match 1.
Okay, we have Stats here at the top, Shin at the bottom. On this map, both players share the left side.
And one of the more interesting ones, we already have Shin mining out the mineral patches here.
Before we could even get this, to even unpack some of the features on this map. So you can mine out the minerals in this area. If you both share the left side of the map, you might think, well, you're very close together, right? Well, not exactly, because they're these minerals that block this area off. But clearly, and by the way, whenever we have a brand new map, you usually see the craziest cheeses.
This is so cool.
Before they're relegated into like an area of everybody knows that. So Shin going for a pretty wild cheese right off the bat. I would imagine what's going to happen is he will have a few more drones come out there and just mine that open. I would assume it probably is going to come from the hatchery that is right by there. And I don't know how ready Stats is going to be for this. Keep in mind, Stats is a player that basically always stays back and kind of tries to get a read on how you're playing, and he tries to stay a little bit ahead, expand and grow on the map. Builds like this are a lot of times the ways that players like Stats end up getting killed off.
And Stats is playing no scout as well, Tasteless. He's being a little bit greedy, doesn't have a single probe on the map. Just after throwing down that cybernetics core, he's going to move out, and you can see right there on the mini-map in the bottom left, those 3 little drones working their way up towards the proxy hatchery.
Now, this wall-in is intended to keep the Protoss safe, but, okay, you can see the 3 drones coming out now. When they open this up, you're going to have access to the main, you're going to have access to the natural, and Protoss never want to be defending 2 or 3 spots at once. And in this case, I think that we may have the shortest game of the entire day start out in game 1. I think this could just straight up kill Stats.
Stats is already scouted. There's no hatchery here in the natural expansion. The minerals are mined out. So this should set off alarm bells back at home, but the rush has already begun. Link speed is underway. 8 links on the map. 6 more reinforcing soon. Stats is throwing down a Stargate in the main base. So he's building an Adept as well, but Tasteless, there's a Baneling Nest going down.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. He sees it. The Lings are going to come in right when the probe spots this. Now, the drones, obviously not an ideal unit with the rush, but it's probably better to use them here to try to close this out and snowball the damage. He's going to go for the pylon. The Adept is going to be pinned in this corner. It can reduce the surface area damage and shade away, but at the same time, cannot cover the battery. And so that battery is going to unpower the gateway here in the main, and that means that one Adept is the only Adept that Stats can have for the time being.
Yeah, no more gateway units are going to be coming out. So for Stats right now, it's all about defending the main base as well as possible. Oh, the Lings, they get us around the Adept. It's able to skirt its way back to the shield battery with some nice probe drilling. He's able to get rid of the surround on that Adept and keeps it alive. And that's critical here with Banelings soon to morph, 4 of them already morphing here in the main base of Stats. And Stats right now, he's so broke. He's not making anything out of the Stargate. He's going for Robotic Facility, only just now beginning the Void Ray. And he's just going to try and hold the main base. If he can hold the main, there's a chance that he wins this game.
Oh, the Bane is going to come forward here. It does connect on top of the Adept, and he actually gets the heal off. There's still a little bit of energy inside of that battery, but so many probes are going to fall at the same time.
Oh, the shield battery gets unpowered too, so this is a critical moment right now. Oh, the Adept goes down. Worker's already down to 12 probes here for Stats. His Shin is going to be reinforcing. The Void Ray is not getting produced.
Yeah.
Both shield batteries unpowered. Keep in mind, no more gateway units are going to be coming out here for Stats. He has to rely on that Void Ray. It's still 10 or 15 seconds away. He's trying to chrono boost it out, but the next round of Banelings and Lings, they're going to be coming in just a moment.
And, you know, the Void Ray is not that good against Zerglings. Obviously, it kills it, but when you have a lot of targets, it takes the Void Ray a long time to do any damage. He's going to try to target down this Bane, and he will kill it in time. 2 more Banes are going to come up. He's going to have to try to juke this over to the right side. A probe with a body block here. It actually saves a little bit more time. I want to believe that Stats can live through this, but it's hard to imagine. By the way, drones are starting to be produced. We may see the end of the rush coming in here.
Stats is surviving at home, but only barely. 10 probes in total alive. He's even having to cut workers to get, excuse me, his Immortal production online. Whereas Shin is just in almost complete control. Now, he is going to get supply block, losing some Overlords like this, but...
I love going for the cybernetic score here. This is just such a strong move because he can pull the Void Ray away, and then he can run up the ramp just like this. And I don't know how much is going to be here to block. The Immortal should come out at like the absolute perfect time. You do not want to have that Immortal attack into the...
oh, no.
Or sorry. Oh, my God. He needs to get... Okay, he doesn't get another Baneling connect on there. Now, these are Speedlings. They're going to be a lot better at killing off these probes. At the same time, 10 probes are still the number that's alive. That was what it was at before the attack. That's what it's going to be at after, too. The Nexus at the Natural also survived, which means he can produce from both the main Nexus and the Natural Nexus. It's easy to forget that when you see, you know, that Natural unpowered and the focus is really on the main and whether or not Zerg can get the killing blow off. If you leave that infrastructure there, it's pretty easy to start back up and kind of continue off where you left the game.
And every single probe back at home of Stats is basically on 1 HP, which is just insane. It shows, you know, what a thin line he's had to walk here on this defense, just barely surviving. But as you said, Tasteless, 2 Nexus both online, chrono boosting out probes, not making energy in case of overcharge, instead just fully focusing on the macro, because now is the lull in the game where Stats can finally work his way back in. And I think he might have just barely thread the needle in terms of defense, where he's going to be able to catch up and get his way into the mid-game in a commanding fashion, because already he's eclipsed Shin in the worker count just as 3 more drones pop out of this hatchery.
Funny.
But, I mean, Shin still doesn't have the natural expansion up just yet.
Yeah, you know, the more I look at this, the more I'm worried for Shin. Having the Robo and the Stargate, this is really good tech to have available. He's got a natural expansion. That hatchery is killed. This is currently a 1 hatchery Zerg. There's a 2nd hatchery being made at the natural, but, you know, whenever you see dramatic cheese like this that hits really hard, and it looks almost too difficult to stop, you also have to face the fact that if they do hold it, the player who was the attacker is suddenly in a really awkward position.
Yes, Shin has no creep spread back at home, only dropping the first tumor with the natural expansion there now and spreading another one from the main into the Nat. And for him, it's kind of a scary proposition just droning blindly here, which is why he's sending these Lings in the main base, because he wants to know exactly what Stats is doing here back at home. Is he only chrono boosting out probes? Is he going to be trying to gear up for 3rd base? Is he going for an Oracle? Is he going for a Warp Prism? Because keep in mind, the Overlords also got denied there by that Void Ray. It wasn't just useful for defense, also was useful for denying scouting. And Shin, being in the low larva position that he is, only just now on 2 hatchery, taking a 3rd hatch, he has to be very careful, because if he makes if he overmakes drones and Stats does decide to go for some kind of timing attack on 2 base, although that isn't really the way Stats generally likes to play this matchup, it could be devastating. So for Shin right now, scouting is absolutely critical.
Does he get that? Yeah, he'll kill that one adept. Just barely not enough.
But I'm liking Stats' position. He's pulling ahead on workers, still even there with Shin, and at some point Shin is going to have to start making military. He's already beginning a round of 12 lings. He needs to have some presence on the map, whether it be for scouting, whether it be for denying potential aggression coming out from Stats. Whereas, you know, as Protoss, you can make workers an army at the same time, just like Terran. So Shin is kind of in a really tricky position, trying to macro out of this, and oh, even the Queens being caught out of position leads to two drones falling in the main base.
And look, with Stats having more probes now, I mean, how much better can this get here? The Zerg is barely getting that third base up. The tech is pretty low. We've got a Forge coming along here for upgrades. Not surprising. Stats not really going for some kind of sharp timing attack, and instead trying to angle for a development game where he can just stay steadily ahead.
Torko's going to catch at least one more drone over here. Going to go into the natural and try and get one more as well. Oh, they can actually loop back to the third and get even more drones. Again, this is another problem with the opening that Shin went for. If you don't get the game-ending damage in, you don't have the production time on the hatcheries or the minerals to really get your queen count up as rapidly as you want. Only now at the 9-minute mark does he have 6 queens in total on the map, so these Oracles getting a lot of work done. Stats taking that third base, going for Blink, +1 ground weapons, and adding on 2 additional gateways. And Shin is just kind of bottlenecked right now on what he's able to do. It's just lings. He's only just now throwing down an Evolution Chamber and a Roach Warren, as well as getting his lair. And you see right there, I mean, Stats did lose those 18 probes, but in terms of total resources lost at this point, Stats is so far ahead of Shin.
I mean, I'm trying to figure out where in the game Shin can try to come back. I think if this is going to go on for several more minutes and Stats is going to eventually develop up and just wait for that timing attack. I don't think there's any world where Shin can try to have another opportunity to hit in. I don't think there's another kind of weird all-in, even something like a Nidus, like to try to surprise him in the back of his base. I don't think that works. Now, one thing about the way this map is shaped is you're both expanding to the right side. So you have Stats just continuing to pull across the top, and Shin going to drag across the bottom. So there's not a location that's obvious that the Zerg would take that you would be prompted to attack into. But you know, as I'm saying that, it seems like Stats feels like this is a good moment to try to come out and poke. Games like this, they're very unnatural because you never, you know, a normal game, you both are doing your builds perfectly. You maybe lose a worker here or there, and you're trying to just develop. In a game like this, it's a crazy all-in, so both players probably have a weird sense of where exactly the other player is.
And Shin right now is going Spire. He's planning on taking it in Mutas to deal with this, but this push coming in the natural expansion and the third, it doesn't get countered by Spire, so Shin's going to have to throw out as many roaches as he possibly can. Stats trying not to overextend here between the natural and the third. There is that reinforcing pylon getting built, as well as a gateway, I believe, here in the middle of the map. And Shin, try as he might to shut down that pylon with those lings that were harassing the third base, he's not able to get it. And this is the stage of the game where Stats' army here with Blink is so microable. He can finesse so much value out of these units. Let's see if Shin's able to take the fight that he needs. I feel like he almost needs Stats to miss micro here and get surrounded by lings, or you know, get clumped up and get hit by Biles, but Stats' control has been so on point so far.
He does snipe the Immortal. If it wasn't an overextension, the Stalkers are going to blink in. Pretty nice Ravager hits. Now, there's a big wave of Stalkers coming in just above the screen here. It does seem like Shin has a decent arc. The question is going to be, how much more damage can these Stalkers eke out? They're a little bit more microable than the Queens and the Roaches and the Ravagers. If a big Ravager shot connects, it's going to be bad for the Protoss, but in theory, you can just continue to dodge those, warp in more, and as this damage continues to pile on, the Zerg could be broken.
And Shin on such a low larva count can't even really make lings here. It's just pure Roach Ravager, so Stats can easily micro all of these weakened Stalkers back. And just look at the damage that he's able to get done with this. I don't think Shin's gonna be able to hold this one. Stats is blinking forward. Oh man,
Whoa.
He takes game one here against Shin. The upset train continues here for Stats.
I mean, that is so sick. What a legendary comeback there from Stats.
He was so close to getting tapped out. He had, I think, 10 probes at one point, all on 1 HP, and that was his entire economy. He almost had to forfeit the natural expansion, but just by the skin of the teeth, he was able to hold on against that rush by Shin, which basically went unscouted. He scouted after the cybernetics core. With his probe moving cross-map, that's when he found out the all-in was coming, and he was just barely able to hold on at home with enough economy that he would power up on 2 bases, take that third, macro into a sick +1 timing attack.
Pour one out for that adept that blocked the Banes coming in.
Got a lot of work done, man.
That's right.
What a win there by Stats, and that is Stats in his peak form, man. He is the shield of ire. He's the best defensive Protoss player we've perhaps ever had in the history of StarCraft 2, albeit maybe your Rain could hold a candle to him, but nobody else.
I mean, it's wild, too, because the cheese worked. He opened up that position on the map, he got in, and Stats still held. Guys, we're going to go to Ghost River for map number 2. Okay, Stats in the top right, Shin in the top left here. Similar to our previous map, both players, sharing a side of the map, which makes it for a game where you're not expanding towards each other and not really expanding away from each other. You're both, in this case, going to be growing in a descending pattern on the map. I'm sorry, there's another drone coming out here.
Oh, I love these
Stat
drawings.
support from Sweden, welcome.
Yeah,
okay, wait. Is he going to make another? He's going to make a hatchery at the natural? Yeah, he is.
I was thinking that
we haven't
Shin
cast this scenario in a little while here.
Yeah, I was thinking that Shin was just going to take his third base right there with that drone movement. I didn't catch it on the second monitor, but he's going for the hatch block, and Stats right now pulling a couple of probes down to the natural expansion. I'm assuming he's going to chrono boost a Zealot out as well.
So this was trendy a couple of years ago, and it's kind of a weird like situation where you're both trying to trip each other up. Since the pylon has been planted and it's committed to the expansion, the Zerg commits his hatchery to where the Protoss' expansion is, and it's like nobody's able to expand. Both players are kind of awkwardly teching up. I think 4 is the correct number of probes to have attack the hatchery to where it should just be killed before it can really do anything.
I remember there was a thread on Team Liquid a many number of years ago that went into the mathematics for how many probes you should pull to deal with a hatch block, and it never made any sense to me. I tried 4, I tried 6, I tried more, I tried less.
Well, the problem is if you pull too many, then you're losing money. Because if they cancel this, which I think he's going to have to, so he does cancel, you lose some minerals because it's a canceled building. Yeah, he didn't kill it, so the drone can keep running around here, which is only going to be a further nuisance because you are going to be teching when you get gases like this. The thing is you don't want them to see your tech. But yeah, clearly Stats has that mathed out where he can force you to cancel or it would be killed. It won't finish. There are some weird games I've seen where they finish it and they try something else cheesy. So it's already an unorthodox game on both sides.
Yeah, but I play on the same ladder as Stats, and Tastes, I can tell you, I guarantee he's played a lot of games against proxy hatcheries like this one, man. 100%. This is like half of my PVZs at least.
Yeah.
I
Sorry, for
dread
a GSL, we don't normally cast it. My bad.
But so far, the response, as you said, is just absolutely perfect. And for a lesser player like me or probably a lot of the other people that are watching at home, you get hatch block like this, and it's exactly as you said. You know, the wrench has been thrown into your build order.
Yeah.
You've lost the feeling of when you should be throwing down your Stargate. You can no longer basically use the clock as your point of reference for when things should be made. And a player of Stats' caliber doesn't really need to worry about that. This guy can roll with the punches. So he's throwing down the Stargate. He's not skipping a beat. He's going back into what I assume is going to be Oracle. And yes, he does start that up. And as soon as that Oracle is out, I would be surprised to see Stats not take that third base because you blindfold yourself, you don't look at the clock, and you open the game up like this. And, I mean, I guess the creep spread at the third base is a bit of a tell, but this doesn't look too different from a typical game in the current point.
So, from here, the Zerg can get back onto normal development. You can see the Adepts are basically roaming to see if they can clear out any extra lings. There are enough lings here to deny a third base. There's a setup where you can use the Oracle plus the 2 Adepts. If you can wedge the Adepts between, like, a Pylon and the Nexus, you're okay. But it looks like Stats is literally looking for that right now.
Oh, a little bit late on activating that Pulsar Beam on the Oracle, so these Adepts will get cleaned up. And whenever you lose Adepts like this, it's really quite painful because suddenly that Oracle can no longer go cross-map to scout. It can no longer go cross-map to try and pick off a handful of drones. It has to basically stay here at the third base to defend. It always just feels so bad losing those Adepts early in PvZ because you lose so much map control. Stats is going to have to wait until Warp Gate is nearly done before he can actually move cross-map here with these Oracles. And now that it finally is complete, you still got to defend this pylon stat. So Shin getting some nice value out of these early Lings. That was a good equalizing play from him. I felt like he was a little bit behind after the hatch block of the natural, but anytime you kill those early Adepts as a Zerg player, you got to be feeling good, especially with the number of Lings that Shin was able to get it done with.
Yeah, definitely getting those is going to be a nice position for Shin. I want to see how Shin is able to hang with stats here in a game that's, I think, a little bit more like this. You know, the last game, look, you do that crazy cheese, and if the Protoss survives, it's going to be hell trying to recover. And I actually think Shin almost did recover. Stats had a really sharp timing attack and knew exactly how to tip the balance into his favor. But let's keep in mind, Stats basically made his name off of gradual development games like this one. This is really where he shines, is kind of staying back and producing. By the way, Stats is bleeding off a decent amount of Adepts here. He gets 2 inside the main. He needs to get several more drones than just these 2 for this to pay for itself. He's going to come through now with these 2 Oracles and maybe try to save this Adept. I think he'll barely knock it there in time. So that's going to roll switch into them trying to snipe drones. Overall, he gets 4 drones, not bad.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair trade for those 4 Adepts. Stats certainly was looking for more, but Shin's defense there in the main base was just on point. Stats can never find that extra opening with the Oracles to really make the Adept pressure worth it. And so instead, he's just going to be macroing safely back at home. The Twilight Council and the Forge are both done. +1 and Blink are being researched. Stalkers in production as well as additional gateways. And we'll see if Stats decides in a more normal game like this one, whether he's going to go again for a Blink Stalker +1 timing attack, or if instead he's going to go more to his textbook slow defensive macro play, because we were talking about this a little bit before we went on air today, but we kind of, at least for me, I think about Shin as more of a mid-game Zerg as opposed to a late-game Zerg. Against a player like Stats in the late game, I have to give Stats the edge. He's just so good at navigating the late game in every single matchup, it feels like. And so in a situation like this one with Shin versus Stats here, already down 1 game in a best of 3, I feel like Stats could just kind of play this defensively from here on out and expect Shin to attack into him. But we will see what the game plan is. Twilight Council, Templar Archives, excuse me, and Robotics Facility now in production, so it seems like it will not be a timing attack from Stats. We'll see if he takes that 4th base with this.
Now, I want to point out, I feel like the way that Stats plays the game is one of the hardest ways to play Protoss. And I don't want to say that to take away from the other styles, but just staying defensive the whole time, dragging the game out until it's finally your turn because you've gotten all your upgrades and all your tech and you can finally win with a timing push while defending. That's hard. And he's really one of the only guys that was ever able to make it work over and over again. I do wonder, like on a map like this, you're both expanding in a descending formation, one player on the left, the other on the right. Where exactly, when it's time for that push to come out from the Protoss, where do you hit?
You know, if Stats truly decides to play a split map late game, he actually doesn't have to push.
That's actually true too. He could just go into like, you know, massing up tech and just staying back and letting the Zerg drain the resources. Kind of like we've seen a lot of these really good Terran players like Maru show everybody in the last couple years.
Exactly. I mean, we're a long way away from that because Shin is mounting this attack here with Roach, Hydra, Ravager, and a good number of +1 Lings. Or at least, are these +1 Lings? Oh, he's going for +1 range attack. Okay, so really leaning heavily on the Roaches and Hydras in this fight. He's pushing up to the natural expansion. That Siren X core is going to be an easy target right here for Shin. Immediately focus firing it down, but now actually Stats coming in for the bottom side, can no longer warp in Stalkers. I don't think there's charge. It's only Blink right now, so he has to rebuild that Siren X core really quickly.
He's got a well-placed Immortal up here. If he can keep microing this back, he could do some decent damage.
Storm is done.
Okay, Storm is done, and the Zerg is basically pushed deep into the natural expansion. Now, the problem is if Zerg doesn't make this work, Zerg also can't get out. But we're seeing the supplies drop right now pretty heavily here for Protoss.
Yeah, heavily. Yeah, Shin is already 3 times the army supply of Stats right now, as Stats can't warp in those high-value units, the Stalkers that he really wants to. I mean, the storms were good, but the reinforcements coming in here from Shin, especially with the natural expansion, taking so much damage, 12 probes in total going down already. I feel like this attack might have just barely broken him. I mean, this might not be the end of the game right here, but for Shin, if he macros up a good counterattack, or a follow-up attack to this, I should say, it'll be really hard for Stats to hold right now. I mean, 15 probes in total going down. Shin is already starting to eye these other bases. If Stats can hold on defensively for a couple more minutes, I think he's in a good spot, but 84 army supply to 36 is really scary right now for Stats.
Now, Stats is not dead, but he's also maybe not going to be alive for a whole lot longer. You can easily refill these supply openings here with more Lings and Roaches and Ravagers.
Oh, that's a lot of Templars.
It's a lot of Templars, yes, and maybe with good storms you can make it work, but Shin is also just hitting a lot of different locations, and this can really pull the Protoss apart. Stalkers are fast, but they do struggle to protect multiple places at once. You know, Blink only goes so far before the cooldown has to kick back in. A dive comes in. The Templars haven't cast Storm yet.
Templars instead working their way back to the third base as the fourth continues to get attacked here. Finally, the Stasis Trap triggers, and the storms coming down here on the top are going to push Shin back for now. Stats is trying his best to stabilize 118 army supply to 48, so really up against the ropes here is Stats.
And, you know, we talked a lot about Stats and the fact that he's good at macroing and developing. I feel like Shin is maybe the best mid-game Zerg we've got in GSL.
Absolutely.
You know, he's able to get in there and kind of go for the knees, take out the player before they can really get to where they need to be. And we're going to try to see him attempt that again here. He's got a smaller decoy attack up above the screenshot, but the bigger attack here at the fourth is wiping out so many workers.
Yeah, 5 more workers going down. That's a good surround on all of the units right there in the third base. Shin, once these Archons morph in, will retreat, but that's a lot of damage getting done already. Still, Stats, he's been on top of his pro production. It's only 65 workers to 70, so just a small worker lead here for Shin. The question is, can Stats actually stabilize? Because, you know, in theory, if he can get an army supply up of maybe 50 or 60 and have a good worker split, or army split, excuse me, he should be able to hold on, but Shin is just doing such a great job of basically pulling him apart. Small Roach counterattacks like this in the main base, and then counterattacking at the fourth, going into the third, trying to snipe Templars where I can. It's really tough for Stats to get his bearings at this stage, but you know, he's not doing a bad job. 4 Templars still on the map are gathering a ton of energy. The upgrades are heavily in favor of Protoss right now. Those Lings are going to do very little with +2 armor coming in a moment. +3 ground weapons in as well, but I mean, these Roaches still getting damage done in the main.
I mean, the number of workers that are getting killed is pretty crazy. Stats is remaking it as fast as he can, but because there are these small openings that he can get into, you know, Stats is a little bit too big picture defending the third and the fourth, and when he left that natural opening there and the Lings got in, the damage just goes up an insane amount. Even though there's a big army here that can defend versus Shin's push, if these small forces get in and keep killing off workers, this big army isn't going to stay big forever.
Some really good storms over down that fourth base as Shin now sets his eyes here on the natural expansion coming in. Stats going to try and chase down and take the good fight over here at the bottom. I like that move from him if he can hold here at the natural. And this bottleneck for the Roach is actually not that bad for Stats. He's still at 57 workers, so his economy behind this, it's still healthy. These upgrades are really paying dividends right now for Stats, but as the reinforcing Roaches come in, he's going to have to find some way to reinforce, or maybe not, man. Those upgrades are carrying so much weight. +3 attack and +2 armor about to finish here for the Protoss. I mean, these Stalkers are packing such a punch against these Roaches.
Now, Shin isn't growing more on the map. He's very much locked into these attacks. And the fact of the matter is Stats hasn't been killed off yet. He is in a constant state of trying to rebuild what he's lost. But the next attack is going to be huge here. Oh, excuse me, we do actually have another base being made. I was wondering when that was going to occur here. It's key that Stats protects both the fourth base, the third base, and this location we're looking at on screen here. He needs to basically seal that up. If he can seal that off and there's no way to attack in, then it just comes down to the army of Stats stopping the army of Shin. Otherwise, it's Shin trying to crack in a position, kill workers wherever Stats isn't defending. By the way, a War Prism started here. So there could be counter-harass or even a counter-push coming up here.
Shin expanding into the bottom left. Still sitting at only 70 drones, a relatively low economy game from him. And he is going to max out, but with the upgraded advantage Stats has at this moment, keep in mind, Shin has no melee attack upgrades at all here for the Lings. The first one is only about halfway done, so their effective damage against the HP of these units is nearly halved, if not exactly halved. It's really just the Roaches, Ravagers, and eventually Banelings are going to be packing the punch here for Shin. And for Stats right now, he might be expecting Shin to be going for a big transition, but Shin's just been reinvesting all of his resources into Army. I'm interested in seeing if Stats actually decides to commit to this push.
Oh my God, a big set of Banes coming in here. Meanwhile, the push is going to come in from Stats. It's possible Stats totally misses this. The Banes are going to come in now, and he's just not looking, and there's going to be so many dead workers here. Literally every probe that expansion killed.
Oh, and the Banelings are even going into the third base right now. Stats is going for a counterattack here at the third, and oh, centrifugal hooks, it completes. Even more workers going down at the third base. Stats is effectively all in right now, 36 workers in total. Now the Banelings have been taking a ton of damage over here on Shin's side of the map, but Roaches, Ravagers, and Hydras, this is a formidable force. There aren't any more storms left. The Warp Prism goes down. Stats is blinking forward, but does he have enough?
I don't know if he's microing that well. A lot of these Immortals are taking direct hits from the corrosive biles. It looks like 2 more might connect as well.
But
the
these
Stalkers are going to come in.
The upgrades are getting so much value. This +3 attack, these Stalkers are putting up such a good fight. Shin might have overextended with all those Banelings, man.
He does. That's going to be a GG.
Stats doesn't need those probes back
Dude,
at home.
That is crazy. Even with the Immortals being lost in the end, Stats just barely had enough. It's crazy because you see all those Banelings come out, it's like, well, that's it. You've lost economically. But it was so many Banelings, some of those could have been used to deal with Stalkers back at home.
And also, let's not forget that before those Banelings ran into the fourth base there of Stats, Stats got so many value storms on slow Banelings on Shin's side of the map, the ones that he had warped in defensively to stop the push. And as a result of that, Shin's army, I mean, he invested so many resources into Banelings. They never really contributed to anything except worker kills, but the game didn't drag out long enough for that to matter. Stats' standing army was just way too powerful. And again, just barely surviving attack after attack after attack was Stats, culminating in a timing push. And that carries him to a 2-0 win. Stats is back, baby. What a tremendous show. And guys, we're going to go to a break. When we get back, Cure versus GuMiho in a TVT.